This wild and desolate Pacific coastline of northern Chile harbors an ancient mystery, a secret beyond death. Here, 5,000 years ago, a youth died. His brain was removed, his body was defleshed, packed with natural materials, wrapped up and buried. Who was this youth, and how did he die? And why did his body undergo mummification, a tradition practiced by his people, the Chinchorros, as far back as 7,000 years ago, 2,000 years before the Egyptians? For a modern archaeologist, this ancient death is as intriguing as a detective story. Many questions are raised. How did this person die? Maybe this was death by misadventure, or disease, or did something more ominous happen? Whatever, it must have been a tragedy for those who loved him. Dr. Bernardo Ariaza of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas has been directly involved in investigating the death of the youth. Was this an accident, or had something more sinister occurred? Determined to solve the mystery, he's tracing the final footsteps of the child across this harsh, even dangerous environment. Rites and customs offer valuable insights into lost civilizations. Ancient death rituals may give Dr. Ariaza new understandings of the complexities of the Chinchorro people. On Chile's northernmost border with Peru is Araca, city of eternal spring, now a South American frontier port. Today, its sandy beaches make it a popular holiday resort. Araca is an oasis, surrounded by desert to the north, barren mountains to the east, and to the south is the Morro, a steep wall of rock towering above the Pacific Ocean. From the Morro, there are magnificent views of dramatic Chilean landscapes and Araca's busy harbor. For thousands of years, the rich harvest from the seas has made it a place of settlement for the Andean people. This was the heart of the Chinchorro culture to which the youth belonged. In 1990, workers in a local timber yard made a shocking discovery of a group of mummified corpses, including that of a youth buried beneath the factory floor. Who was this youth? How did he die? Physical anthropologist Dr. Ariaza wants to figure out the fate of this youth. His first line of inquiry is at the place of burial. The lumberyard manager takes him to the exact spot where the body was found, an exciting sight for the scientist.
I was very pleasantly surprised that he showed me the place exactly where the mummies were found. I knew they were here, but I was touched to find the exact place. It was a real event for his workers over here. They stopped everything, they called the museum. I was very thankful that they did that. And now I was telling him where the mummies are at the museum and all the research that had been done. And after 10 years, he said, wow, it's amazing that still some people are coming to know more about those mummies.
This youth, who died before his time, is one of hundreds of mummies found hidden in the deserts and sandy beaches along the Pacific coast of Chile. If Dr. Ariaza can unravel the details of his death and the mummification of his body, we may gain clearer perceptions of the ancient culture of the Chinchorros. Ariaza's second port of call is the University of Tarapacá's Paleopathology Research Laboratory. Here, the youth has been brought to rest alongside the fragile remains of other Chinchorro mummies, time travelers, holding secrets to their past. Ariaza's forensic examination will help him figure out what happened to the youth.
It's like a puzzle. It's a curiosity. It's the desire to know what was going on there, because we have different parts of this picture. So you are missing a little part of that puzzle, and you look for it until you find it. And then when you have the complete picture, then you say, wow, this is how they did it, you know. Or, this is what happened back then. It's like a detective story. In the case of mummies in general, it's like a time capsule where you can find information of 100,000, 5,000, 10,000 years ago. So we can study the death of the person, the sickness, the diet, and so we can recreate the history. It's like a library being frozen in time.
What the scientists find particularly interesting about this library is that the Chinchorro people intentionally preserved their dead, perhaps to prepare them for the afterlife. It was a complicated and time-consuming process, and a great deal of energy must have gone into preparing the bodies, like that of the youth. A small fragment of wood, taken from one of the stakes used to reinforce the youth's body, was sent to the United States for analysis, dating the remains to 2,800 years before the Common Era. It was clear that the victim was male because his genitalia were modeled in clay.
In relation to his height, it's about 153 centimeters. We also know that he's a young individual because the bones still hasn't fused. So we think that could be between 15 to 17 years of age.
So when this youth died, he seemed healthy, on the brink of manhood, but still young. He and other mummies found nearby indicate to Araca a unique facet of Chinchorro society.
In the case of the Chinchorro, even fetuses were mummified. And that tells something about the grief, about the pain, about the love to their own children. Okay? So everybody was being mummified, everybody was being treated in the same way.
Mummification of the dead is usually associated with ancient Egypt and reveals their complex beliefs about the afterlife. But the Egyptians began mummification around 3000 BCE, as many as 2,000 years later than the Chinchorros. In the youth's time, the Egyptians only mummified the most important members of their society, but the evidence suggests that the Chinchorros mummified all their dead, regardless of sex, age, or social rank. Some Chinchorro mummies were created naturally, the bodies conserved by the desert climate. The nitrates present in the Atacama Desert absorb body fluids and prevent attack by bacteria, so internal organs and even facial features remain largely intact. But other bodies were artificially mummified, the vital organs extracted and replaced with organic materials, a task requiring skilled morticians. Dr. Araca has come to meet Mariela Santos, curator of the Archaeological Museum San Miguel de Azapa in Arica. She's been creating a replica mummy with the artificial mummification process used on the youth. The Chinchorro morticians of 5,000 years ago removed the flesh from his skeleton, reinforced his long bones with sticks, and reshaped his body with natural materials. A paste of clay and water was tinted, using ochre for red and black manganese to decorate his torso.
I think what is interesting with the replica that Mariela is doing here is that we can have some information, maybe how long did it take to prepare the body, how long did it take to dry, did they fix it, how many times they painted. So we can have some information of specific resources that we're using and the problems that they have.
Mariela Santos can deduce from making this replica the most difficult part of the process.
Creating the structure of the body, to put everything together to stuff the body with fibers and twigs, I think that's the longest part of the process. Then, finally, covering the body with the clay. But then to paint it and to put on the accessories, I think that's faster and there isn't any problem. But the slowest part is to cover it with clay.
It's believed the Chinchorro began the practice of artificial mummification about 5000 BCE. The Chinchorro morticians literally took the dead person's body apart, treated it, and reassembled it. The skull was cut in half and the brain removed. The skull was then dried and packed with organic matter and tied back together along the jawbone. The organs were removed and the limbs defleshed. Finally, the morticians would put the body back together again strengthening the limbs and spine with sticks and clay. They might also add a layer of human skin and a wig of human hair before applying the final coat of paint. Dr. Ariadza thinks the paint might give him a clue as to how the youth died.
I think it's very intriguing that we have this paint because we haven't seen too many bodies with this type of decoration. This is the only one that we have with the stripes. Is something because he was killed? Maybe they painted that way? At the moment, we don't know.
Ariadza can reasonably assume from the experiment that this child was dearly cherished and his death was a terrible loss. After all, his family and other members of his community respectfully and painstakingly treated his body for mummification and painted him with stripes, a unique pattern. Perhaps this special decoration was applied to symbolize the sorrow in the tragic death of this youth. But can Ariadza find out how and why he died? Ariadza needs more clues. He believes that an understanding of the Chinchorro's attitude towards life and death may help him understand the death and burial of the youth. Vital clues may lie in the very environment in which the youth lived and died, the desert beyond Araca, where hundreds of other Chinchorro mummies have been found. The Atacama is a harsh landscape of sheer rocks and deep ravines. Its soils are mineral-rich, especially in coppers and nitrates. In ancient times, this mineral wealth provided an ideal environment for the preservation of the dead. Ariadza has brought archaeologist Dr. Calajero Santoro to the desert to try to get an idea of the meaning behind the youth's death and mummification. Santoro is convinced that tradition guided the mummification process. The custom must have played an important role in teaching the younger members of society about Chinchorro culture and belief.
I think that the mummification also have another explanation, another function, not only related with death, but to keep the society alive. I think during the time that a mummy was prepared, there were several moments, particular moments to educate the new generation, to transmit the knowledge about the principle or their societies.
Very important to keep the tradition alive there.
And you keep
this is the way to do it.
And you keep the tradition by talking, It's just an oral tradition. Yeah. So amazingly, they were able to keep their tradition for 4,000 years.
Right. In the case of our boy here, can you imagine the situation, the grief that went on into the Chinchorro?
If we think that during those days, there was few people living in the area, so the loss of one member of that community, it had to be a very great loss, So it was not only the pain of having this little child not alive anymore, but also thinking of the survival of the whole community, right, because there was no more genes to be passing to the next generation. I think that it was painful to have this child to be killed in that tragic condition,
The Chinchorro culture comprised of a necklace of small fishing communities dotted along the coastline. This precious, narrow strip of land was the only habitable area between the Pacific Ocean and the Atacama Desert. It is unlikely that neighboring communities would fight over food, as the ocean provided a plentiful supply. Competition and aggression was more often between men in search of a spouse.
I think that being this culture or these people living so compressed by the desert, I think even they have an easy life in terms of their subsistence because they were getting their food from the ocean. But on the other hand, there was, I think, a lot of tension between the groups, not because of the food, tension because of the need for mating. This is one of the major problems for small social groups in many parts of the world, particularly of hunter and gatherers.
There is still much to learn about the role of women in Chinchorro society. But in most hunter-gatherer societies, they were a source of stability, providing a home environment and children. Dr. Santoro's analysis has added a new twist to the mystery surrounding the death of the youth. He may have been killed by another person over a potential spouse. This may not have been an accident at all. Forensic science will help test this hypothesis. New evidence has come to light, giving Ariadza a completely different picture. In 1999, museum curators were moving the body to a better display case when a vertebra moved out of place, revealing what looked like a small arrow tip embedded in the spine. This was significant in establishing a theory as to how the youth died.
There was, wow, something nasty happened here, you know? And then we start to look more carefully, and indeed it was the tip of an arrow point embedded in the vertebra, in the bone itself. That was quite a day.
The discovery of the arrow tip could point to foul play. Could Ariadza now be on a murder inquiry? He meets paleopathological specialist Dr. Vivian Standin for her opinion on this new, surprising evidence. She's been investigating other cases which may help Ariadza construct a theory.
Do you think the death of the youth was intentional or a homicide?
Yo creo que fue intencional. Fue intencional. ¿Por qué?
I think it was intentional because we have a lot of evidence of individuals within the Chinchorro culture who show a high level of interpersonal violence.
Violencia interpersonal e incluso otros casos también de muerte violenta.
And also there are other cases of violent death with the sharp end of a projectile, a weapon found inside the bodies which would help the hypothesis that this boy was killed intentionally, murdered intentionally.
Digamos, muerto, asesinado.
So the youth may have been killed deliberately. Can forensics give Ariadza more detail of exactly how he was killed?
Entonces, por la posición que tiene la punta de proyectil en el cuerpo.
Because of the position of the sharpened instrument in the spinal cord, it must have entered from the front. So the individual who threw the dart must have been in front of the boy. And there must have been a reasonable amount of distance between them as it entered, with quite a bit of force, as it went through the organs and through the spinal cord.
What, 15 meters, 10 meters?
10 meters maybe, and it must have been thrown intentionally.
Yo pienso lanzada en forma intencional.
So I think what happened here, they have thrown sticks with a very sharp flint on the end, and they catapult it or they throw it to the person, and then will come right to his stomach.
So the youth may have been killed by a harpoon or spear, but Ariadza isn't convinced that this is the only injury suffered by the youth.
There is one hole that has to do with the mummification practices. However, there are two other holes in the skull. One is more rectangular and has some look like blood stains over there. So that looked like a blow to the head.
Do you think it is possible he was hit again with another blow to the head? Maybe he was lying on his back and then got another blow from the front.
Es probable porque tenemos evidencia de dos agujeros.
It is possible because we have evidence of two holes in the frontal bone area. Now, this is also part of the mummification process, which needs some preparation, post-mortem. So there was a piece of wood they used to put inside the body during the mummification process through the skull. But in this case, he has another two injuries at the frontal bone level that could be related to an act of violence, as we saw before, with a sharpened instrument.
Recent excavations and analysis carried out by Standin and her team have provided new evidence of violent deaths among the Chinchorros. Perhaps the Chinchorro culture was not as peaceful as archaeologists had previously thought. As in every other human society, peace and conflict were a part of everyday Chinchorro existence.
We do have more evidence. In this case, we are looking at an individual, also from the Chinchorro culture, on whom artificial mummification was not practiced. He was mummified naturally. And we can see in this case that the weapon stayed inside the body. He has a harpoon. It went right through his side and through the sternum and finally the spinal cord. And probably, and surely, it must have gone through his heart and lungs. Maybe this piece of flesh stuck to the harpoon was from the lung, which could have caused his death.
la muerte inmediata. Casos como este.
We have many cases like this one in the Chinchorro culture.
The harpoon death of the man and the spearing of the youth are not unusual cases. Dr. Araca and his colleagues are beginning to question how peaceful Chinchorro society actually was. Why did the youth die? Could he have been a victim of a dispute between rival fishing groups?
So it seems like it's a more violent society than we really expected. Now, what is your view into that? Why do you think they were so violent?
I think they were very territorial, you know. Probably they have sort of complementary relationship, but I think also they have a lot of antagonism. They fight each other, competition yeah. for women, for resources, for particular spaces that were secret spaces, you know.
The mountainous terrain around Araca gave the Chinchorros few opportunities for agriculture and settlement.
There was no other way to go. You have the valley, the coast, and that was it.
So one of the things that was triggering this violence would be competition for mate, fighting, kidnapping.
I think the case of this boy probably happened in that it was a fight between two different groups fighting for one woman, particular woman, probably the mother of this boy.
Dr. Santoro believes the youth may have been killed trying to defend his own mother. If that was the motive, what was the weapon?
We have two possibilities. One will be a harpoon and the other will be a throwing stick. What's your opinion?
Well, if you think that it was that way, it will be thrown from far away. But my impression that this kind of combat between this group, it was sort of a very close fighting. Yeah. So, and it's the way that you kill a sea lion. You know, you have to get very close and you have to, yeah.
So the youth may have been killed like an animal, but by whom? Could there be a clue in the quartz tip embedded in his spine?
In this case was quartz, and quartz you can find all over these cliffs, you know.
So the raw material is something local?
It's a local raw material.
If the spear tip was made with quartz from the neighboring hills, then the culprit probably lived nearby.
It would be someone within different groups or within different families that were in conflict, and the boy was intentionally killed. He doesn't think that could be an accident.
But who killed the youth? The quartz tip is a crucial piece of evidence that points to an attack on the youth by a neighbor. The most unnatural death is that of a youngster, but this was no accident. This youth didn't slip and fall to his death on the treacherous rocks. He didn't die from illness or disease. Araca's investigation has allowed him to hypothesize that this may have been murder.
In this case, if we can create a scenario of what happened, we can have maybe someone shellfishing in a particular area, and later on having someone else approaching that person or having an argument, maybe why you are shellfishing in my area. You know, some kind of argument develop, and then one person move away, and then the person use a throwing stick with a flint, and the person being hit. Maybe he's suffering from the pain, and then the person get closer and get another blow, but in this case to the head. That will be one hypothesis how the thing may have happened.
So this youth, this time traveler, has revealed secrets of history. He was killed, perhaps in defense of his own mother, perhaps in an argument over fishing rights. We may never know why, but in death he was tenderly and carefully preserved by the people who loved him, and his small body is today a precious window into the past.
The dead were part of the living. The dead were prepared for the benefit of the living, to keep the social harmony, to help with the grief. Something that is uniting us and the Chinchorros is the grief that people feel in front of death. That's something universal. Okay? Doesn't matter how poor, how rich, the pain of losing someone that you really love is going to be felt anyway. So that's the common thread between us, the Chinchorro, and this boy over here that was murdered thousands of years ago.